Welcome to the Paul Young podcast. We continue our storytelling with Linda Yoder. So now enjoy Linda Yoder, part 2.
You're listening to the Paul Young podcast.
Tell me another story that you like.
What? No, what story? You've heard everything.
No, you've got 1,000 stories.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. I don't know. What story do you want to hear? You're so funny.
Oh, I'd like to hear any of your stories. You are a good storyteller.
I don't know about that, but we've had a fun life.
Yes, you have.
And I could not have married a better guy.
I believe that.
Did I ever tell you about when we got married and went out there for a wedding reception?
No, tell me.
Oh my gosh. So we got married. They came out to California. Wes's little parents were so cute. I didn't know anything about Mennonites, and they had their adorable little prayer covering on her head. And I thought that was just adorable. I didn't know what it was, but Wes explained to me. We got married and then we went to Hawaii on our honeymoon and flew to Pennsylvania for a wedding reception in Wes's parents' backyard. And I knew nothing of Mennonites or Amish. I mean, come on, you get run over in California. You can't go down a horse and buggy down the interstate. So I just knew nothing about it. And we stayed in the basement and it was dark and there's just hardly any windows in there. And so we're getting ready down there and we come up when it's time for the reception. We come upstairs, I had this little silk blouse on, this cute little short skirt. Everybody starts arriving in horse and buggy and dressed head to toe in black. And I thought, what in the world? I have married into a cult. What have I done? I literally grabbed him and threw him in the bathroom and closed the door and literally pushed him up against the wall. And I said, who are these people? Why are they dressed like this? Why are they in black? Why are they driving a horse and buggy? What is going on? Am I married? Did I marry into a cult? And I was just rattling off all these questions. He's laughing. He goes, Linda, these are my relatives. They're Amish. I said, what's an Amish? And he just died laughing. He just thought I knew. And I had to go out there and just mingle with them. And all I could think of the whole time is if my friends in California could see me now, they would just be dying. But they would come up to me. They're like, we hear you're from California. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. And I was just like, oh my gosh. But they were so cute and so sweet. But for a moment there, I thought, what have I done? For just that moment, I thought I'd married into some crazy cult. But instead, I won the lottery. Nicest people in the world.
Yeah. And you were a California girl.
Through and through.
What was your faith story?
My who?
Your faith. How did you come
faith.
to faith?
Oh, faith. You said face. I was like, what? My faith story? It's this face. No, my faith. Well, I was crazy and wild. My parents were divorced. My father was a believer. And so I got, when I would be with him, some teaching. And my grandmother was she was a believer, was always giving me books to read, and I would never read them, which is kind of funny. Like Great Planet Earth and all those books to try to scare you out of hell.
I think you're better off not having read them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it's crazy. This sweet couple moved next door to me. I was a senior in high school, and wild as they come, this sweet little couple moved next door, and I saw them moving in. So I ran over and said, do you need some help hauling your stuff out? They had a big U-Haul, and I started taking boxes in. And I noticed all their boxes had stuff like, of course, this is the Jesus movement days. It had these things that say Jesus saves or God loves you or whatever scriptures. It had everything about God on everything. And I was like, golly, everything's about God. And I was bringing it all in. To preface that, I had been alone at night feeling God's presence call me, but I didn't know what it was. I told you this story, right?
Yep.
What I did to the church when I went to the church.
Keep telling it.
So I was confused why I could feel God calling me and I could feel his presence in my room when I wasn't a person of faith and when I didn't want to be a person of faith, but I wanted to know why he was quote unquote bugging me. And so I went to this church. I worked at a theater in high school, and this church had rented out the whole theater and showed Time to Run. It was a movie.
Right.
And a Christian movie.
Billy Graham, I think.
They were all witnessing to me the whole time they were there. And I'm like, stop, forget it. No way. But when I started feeling God's presence calling me and bugging me, as I called it, I decided I would go to that church and find out if they could answer me why he was doing that. So I drugged my boyfriend and we went to the church. We're sitting there and it was during the whole Nixon thing. And so the preacher was not talking about God. He was just ranting and raving about politics. And I thought, oh, this is not what I needed. This is not at all. We're at the wrong place. And we were kind of sitting not all the way in the back, but towards the back. And so I thought, well, we'll just slip out. And so we stood up to go to walk out. And the preacher from the pulpit goes, just where are you going? And my boyfriend's like, well, now you've done it. I was like, and I turned around and I was just like horrified. And I said, but I wasn't being sarcastic. I was being very sincere. And I said, I'm sorry. I came here to find God, but he's not here. And he started yelling at me. I mean, people were like gasped when I said it. And then we just took off running and we ran like the wind to our car. And then we actually locked our keys in the car, which made it even more complicated, but that's another story. So then when this couple shows up and is loading everything up and all this stuff about God is everywhere, I thought, well, I can ask them. So I said, hey, I noticed that you've got stuff about God on everything. Can I ask you a question? And they said, sure. I said, why at night when I try to go to sleep, do I feel God? I feel like he's right there and he's trying to talk to me or something. I don't know. Why is he bugging me? And they both just kind of looked at each other and they said, why don't you put that box down? Let's have a talk. And they sat down and I sat next to him on the couch and they just shared because he wants a relationship with you. And they just started sharing their faith with me. They were the only people that I'd met where I totally could relate to everything they were saying. And I was intrigued by it. And they said, do you want to go to church with us tonight? And I said, tonight? You go to church at night? And they said, we go to Calvary Chapel. They have concerts on Thursday nights. And I said, oh, that hippie church? So they said, well, whatever, yeah, that one. I said, I guess so. And so, yeah, that's where the whole thing began, which is just kind of crazy.
Wow. Wow.
And the funny thing is we found each other recently. We had lost track of each other and we found each other recently and they came out here last year. And they were the ones that, started my whole faith journey. And it was really sweet to be back with them all these years. And it was great. But, I feel like because I was so completely unchurched and crazy, kind of wild, God, in his great mercy and wisdom, sheltered me greatly because shortly thereafter, I started working at a jewelry store and I graduated high school early because I tended to be a bit of an overachiever. I was taking classes in college and deciding to try to figure out my life. And this gentleman walked in and he came into the jewelry store and was talking to me and I waited on him and it was really sweet. And he noticed I had the little fish necklace. He said, oh, you're a Christian? I said, oh, I just became a Christian. He said, where do you go to church? I said, I go to Calvary. He goes, yeah, so do I. And he was just talking and he was really sweet. He leaves later that day, about 5 o'clock, the phone rings at the store. And he said, is Linda there? And I said, this is Linda. And he said, hi, this is Jim Willems. I was in there earlier and you waited on me. And we both go to Calvary. I said, oh yeah, I remember. He said, listen, when do you get off? I said, excuse me? And he said, no, that sounds really awful. He said, I want to know if you will meet my wife and I for dinner. Just walk down from where you work at Shoney's there and meet us. There's something I want to talk to you about. And I'm like, I guess so. I mean, I was really confused. I was like, he said, no, I promise. I just want to talk to you about something. And I said, okay. And I walked down there and got in the booth and his wife wasn't there. And then I was like, oh, great. Some old geezer is going to hit on me or something. And he said, I'm sorry, she couldn't come the last minute. He said, I want to hear how you came to the Lord. And I kind of told him and he wanted to know more of my story. And then he said, have you heard of this place opening up called Maranatha Village? And I said, yeah, the bookstore. And he said, yeah. He said, I own it. And I said, well, good for you. And he said, we're in the middle of getting it ready to open and I want you to come work for me. I said, what? I heard there was a line that was several blocks long applying for those jobs. He said, true. I said, why do you want me to come work for you? He said, I don't know. I just knew the moment I met you that you were supposed to be part of our team. He said, I just know that I know. And he said, please consider it. And I said, no, it's done. I would love to come work for you. And so I went to work for him and ended up being one of the managers, which is why I met Wes. And
Wow.
the courses that I would take in school, Jim paid for. I mean, I became much more like a daughter to him than that. I mean, he was just so great. But even the very beginning, I said, but you have to know, I've never even read a Christian book. And he said, well, you're going to be required to read one a week. And we have Bible studies every morning and we have this and but I realized I needed that. I think I would have been that seed that got pulled up, the cares of the world would have taken over. And I just was taken out of my environment and completely sheltered and fed spiritually and lovingly. And then I had to read Christian books and I did love to read. So I just devoured everything. I went through all the C.S. Lewis books. I just devoured absolutely everything that I could get my hands on. I read more than a book a week usually. But he was really cute when he first hired me. He said, any questions you have, I know you're not churched. Any questions you have, just ask me. And I said, you won't make fun of me? He said, no, of course not. You can ask me anything. And so I got hired in October. That spring was Easter. And I came up to him. I told the story at his funeral. I came up to him and I said, you know how you told me I could ask anything? He said, uh-huh. I said, okay, I know Easter's a big deal. I know it's a big religious holiday of some sort, but what is it exactly? And he throws his head back and just belly laughs. And I'm like, you said you wouldn't laugh at me. He goes, I'm sorry. This just really caught me off guard. He said, that's kind of like asking what Christmas is. He said, yeah, it is really important. It's a really important holiday. Let me explain. And I was like, oh, and I said, well, of course it's important. Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's how completely unchurched I was. I mean, it was pretty funny. But, I think back on how gracious God was that he put me in that environment and just put me in a cocoon of love. And the relationships that I made there, we are still super tight. Two of the girls that I worked with are flying out. We have to go to a wedding this weekend. One of the girls lives there in Branson, Missouri, and the other's like, no, I'm coming too. So she's flying from Colorado so we can all just hang out and be together. But we're all so still close in that group. It was such a sweet time. But yeah, that's kind of my faith journey. And that's how I met Wes.
Just for context, how long have you been married to Wes?
47 years,
Uh-huh.
48 years.
That's amazing.
One of those. It's either 47 or 48.
Yep. I think all of us, if we began to look seriously at our stories, we would find the weaver weaving. We would find, without coercion, the activity of the Holy Spirit, redeeming the situations that we walk ourselves into.
Yeah.
And it would be an
Absolutely.
amazing, absolutely amazing story worth any screen in any theater ever. It's just stunning to me.
When you look back at your life and you see his handiwork all the way through it,
Yeah.
it is just amazing.
Yeah.
The Jim Willems walked into that jewelry store that day,
Yeah.
and it changed the whole course of my life. And that's why I said it. When I showed up at his funeral, his daughter called me to tell me he died, and I was so sad. But they, at that point, were living in a retirement village. And she said, we had to go to another funeral in Pennsylvania. And so I said I couldn't be there. But when I got the phone, Wes said, no, I'll go to the one in Pennsylvania. You go to Jim's. He changed your whole life. And so I showed up and she freaked when she saw me. And she said, Linda, you need to know that Mom has got dementia. There's some days she remembers people and there's some days she doesn't remember anything. And so don't be surprised. I said, no, I'm here to honor your dad and, to be here it's okay. I understand. And all of a sudden she's walking across. I see her with her little walker walking across this hall, and she stops and she stares, and all of a sudden she goes, oh, everyone, Linda's here, come quickly, Linda's here. And her daughter turned to me and she goes, well, so much for not remembering. I mean, and I ran up to her and hugged her, and she goes, I can't believe you're here. And then she said, oh, by the way, I just finished reading Wes's book. I said, oh my gosh, I haven't even read it yet. Don't tell him. And she's like, I can't believe you're here. Oh, it's so perfect though. I want you to speak. And I'm like, oh no, I don't speak in front of people, Betty. There's no way. And she said, yes, you do. Nobody can tell stories about that time of our life like you. And you were there for all of it. And I want you to talk about those days. And I was like, okay. So I did. I got up and spoke and told the crazy story of not knowing what Easter
How
was.
precious is that? I mean, think about it. California wild child
Meets Amishman.
from a very rigid, structured,
Yeah.
you
Crazy.
know, religious upbringing, who makes it from central Pennsylvania. It just boggles my mind. So he's in California to introduce a book. Was he doing book or music at that time?
It was actually a book then.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of his first books. That was a crazy thing. Yeah. He jokes all the time because at one point I got offered a job in Germany to run a bookstore and really considered it. And he said, gosh, I guess I would have had to come to Germany to find you. But, it was hard because when I made the decision to marry him, because I loved California and I loved my job and I loved my friends. I was in such a great community. I mean, Jim and Betty were like my parents. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave, but I was in love with him. And one of us was going to have to relocate it, and it wasn't going to be him. He did not like California at all. So it was me. But it was the right decision. It was by far the right decision, but it was a hard one. I didn't want to leave. It was a great life. It was wonderful out there.
Yeah. And you're that.
I'm still a beach girl all the way.
Oh, I know you are. So.
No, you can't take it out of him. It just stays.
Uh-huh.
Once a beach girl.
Yeah, you've changed Nashville, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably not. Some would probably say not for the better, but oh well. It is what it is. But anyway, yeah, it's good. It's always good. It's been a journey, but God has been faithful, and he brought you guys into our life, and that was one of the best gifts of all.
Thank you. And we feel exactly the same way. It's like, okay, especially in the kind of process that, we were going on with the shack and how crazy that was and all that. I
Mhm.
mean, you all were such a stabilizing factor in the midst of this wave that we had no experience or background in terms of navigating.
Well, none of us did. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, when we're the stabilizing factor, that's kind of scary. But
That's how unstable we were.
that's we were real unstable. You were very unstable if we were your stabilizing factor. It's amazing. We all made it through that. But we've been on such a crazy journey. And since then, we've been through so many things with you guys. And I can't imagine doing life with anybody beside us, beside y'all. I mean,
We feel the same way.
it's
How
been good.
precious is that? Oh, I love it.